Hey everybody, welcome to the Crit House. I'm Jeff Larson. Our My Five series continues with this week a photographer and a gallerist, Greig Cranna, who is with the Bridge Gallery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Greig, it's great to have you on the program here. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so now you spent not a lifetime, but a career as a photographer, and over the last 5 years or so, now you're a gallerist. How do you think of yourself as a creative person? How do you describe yourself in your career now?
It's interesting. You say it has been a lifetime, really. I mean, I've been in the business professionally for 45 years, seriously for 50. It's hard to imagine, but the two are very different. And when I decided to open a gallery, it was because I felt like, I was approaching 70. My career was starting to wind down, and I wanted to wind it down a little bit. But I wanted to stay in the game. I wanted, I've loved photography since I was about 15 or 16, and I wasn't prepared to not have it be part of my life. And I hoped that it would stimulate me and keep me stimulated, so I would keep shooting, because I've been a commercial photographer my whole life. I've shot for other people. And I've always been able to be creative within that world, and always, as I got more and more successful, people hired me to do my thing, which was great. But you're still, when you're on somebody else's dime, you're thinking differently than when you're out on your own. And I hope that I would be able to continue to feel creative. I mean, I've always been, a busy creative guy. I've worked in.
And you're sitting in your gallery right now. We'll see some of the images. I know one of the images we're going to talk about is behind you there. So you chose 5 images, and we talk about this as being, well, what are 5 images that have had meaning to you? What did you go through in choosing what your 5 images? Because that's sometimes hard, right?
Yeah, obviously it's very hard, because I've had a lot of photographs that have really moved me throughout my life. But one of the things I thought a lot about, when I was thinking about this and about you, was that sometimes something that really moves you at one point in your life, you grow out of, or stops being important, or you realize as you get more mature. It's like in music, when you start playing guitar, you realize a lot of stuff you grew up listening to, they weren't very good. And, so, I mean, I was always a natural history kid. So when I first started getting into photography, the 2 things that interested me were rock and roll and nature. And so I wanted to be either a nature photographer or a rock and roll photographer.
That's opposite sides of the spectrum, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I started paying attention to people like Elliot Porter, and a big landscape, and that all changed when I was about 16 or 17 and discovered Cartier-Bresson. I said, okay, wait a second. Anybody can go to some stream and take a beautiful picture of it, in the fall. But that idea of capturing a moment in time was what really turned me on, and irreproducible results. So I tried to pick things that affected me as a young photographer growing up, things that turned me on or showed me something new, and then things that continued to stimulate me as I got older and got not jaded, but when you've been in the business a long time, you kind of seen it all, and so when something new comes along, it's really cool. And that's what's been great about the gallery, is it keeps introducing me to, interesting, cool stuff. And
well, let's take a look at your 5 images.
Yep. So this is Andreas Feininger. I discovered this photograph when I was about 16, and I picked it for a lot of reasons. One, I just think it's an incredibly beautiful image.
It is.
But as a 16-year-old, it instantly went into my brain as, wow, you can do motion, time-lapse stuff with cameras. And Feininger was a Life magazine photographer. His father was Lionel, one of the Bauhaus originators. And he never achieved gigantic fame like lots of people, but he had a really, really good career, did a lot of great stuff. But for me, as a young photographer, I had started out just sort of pointing my camera at things that I thought looked cool. And I realized that, you could really make pictures. It's different than just going out and finding them. And this is a time exposure. He's popped a strobe or a couple of strobes on the helicopter to light up the strobe, and then just kept the shutter open. Now remember, this is pre-digital, so this is like figuring technical stuff out beforehand without being able to check the back of the camera and see how you're doing. I found it graphically unbelievably beautiful. The flow of the lights on the blades, and the way it's like a slinky. I actually own this print, and it's over in my office, and it just blows my mind every time I look at it. So from this I discovered Jean Milli's stuff. He did this incredible picture of Picasso painting with a flashlight, and it just opened up my eyes to like a new possibility that you could leave the lens open, you could use other light to fill in, and I 30 years later I was shooting portraits of people using big strobes and available light, but it all came from this, and so this when I started collecting the photographs 20 years ago, this was really like one of the first on my hit list that I really wanted to own, because it had such a major effect on me and opening up my eyes to possibilities.
Your second image from John Gutman.
So this is John Gutman is another one of these guys who's he's not really well known, but he had a pretty big career in my mind. He shot this in 1934. It's kind of hard to figure out where it was shot, but it's called Omen. And I bought this as a postcard when I was living in New York as a 25-year-old or something. Photofolio, I think it had produced this as a postcard. And I had it on my bulletin board for years and years and years. And there were so many pieces of this that were so powerful. I mean, just graphically it's phenomenal. The silhouettes of the 5 people down below, with the one guy's higher than the other, the positioning of the planes. I mean, it's a perfectly composed photograph, but it's scary as hell. This is 1934. This is an omen. He's talking about the onset of World War II. Yeah. And and I was haunted by it for it's always been one of my #1 images, and this is also one that I own. And when I first met Mark Feeney, the critic from the Globe, and we were talking about, he said, well, I've got this great photograph in my office. It's one of my favorite. And I said, what's that? He said, John Gutman's Omen. And I said, oh, brother from another mother. The other picture that I wanted to pick, which I didn't because somebody else had done it recently, was Arnold Newman's portrait of Igor Stravinsky. Yes. Yeah. That is the perfect portrait. It's absolutely impeccable on so many levels that you could just look at it and look at it and look at it and envy.
So your third image from the amazing Mary Ellen Mark.
This is kind of an interesting segue from talking about the Arnold Newman portrait. I've had this conversation / argument with photographers and other people, including my wife, for many, many years about celebrity portraiture. Is it a good photograph, or is it just because Brad Pitt's in it? Right. And there are some really exceptional celebrity photographs, and I have a couple of them in my collection. My wife put her foot down and said, I don't want a lot of celebrity portraits on the wall. This to me is the ultimate celebrity portrait. This is Federico Fellini directing Satyricon in Rome, and it is totally irrelevant that it's Fellini. It is it's got body English, it's got motion, it's just got so much mojo. It's I can't get enough of this image, and I guess that's what going back to the whole idea of celebrity. There is something about the celebrity face. Part of the reason we make them celebrities is because they're either beautiful or they're unique or they're better looking than we are, but there are times when lots of times I really question, is this picture really good, or is it just because it's got so-and-so in it? This has everything for me. I love photographs that capture a little bit of body English, some movement, that hand or that foot. It's something that I've looked for in my photography for years and years. And then afterwards you find out this is Fellini, and it's my generation, that's cool. I mean, some 20-year-old, it probably wouldn't mean anything, but it's exceptional. I first discovered Mary Helen Mark It was 1978, and I was living in New York City, and I went down to Central Park to try to be an extra in Milos Forman's hair. And, and my hair wasn't long enough. I was more into like the post-punk sort of stuff at that point, or punk, and I didn't look like a hippie as much as like a punk, and so I didn't get picked. But Marielle Lamarck was shooting the stills for it. She shot a lot of production stills for films, which is what she was doing here. And I was just so struck. And number one, at that point, I had never met a woman in the business. You know, all the photography, it was such a boys' club. And she was really beautiful. And she was just in the mix, taking pictures. And I thought, wow, that's what I want to do.
Your fourth.
Yeah, this one, this is a guy who nobody knows. I have been in communication with him for about 2 or 3 years about trying to get him to show here. He's Polish. He lives in Poland. His name is Tomasz Gudzowaty. I discovered this image at the Annenberg in LA about, God, it's probably 10 years ago. He won Picture of the Year with this photograph. And I was obsessed with it. There were so many things I couldn't get over. I mean, it was beautiful black and white. I couldn't get over the viewpoint, like where was he and how was
Yeah,
this
right.
shot? He shoots on film. And so I did a screen grab took a picture with my phone of the thing, and I tracked him down in Poland and bought a print from him. And then he just wowed me. He sent me this book of his sports features, and he had done Mexican car culture and Mongolian horse races and Shaolin monks and Chinese acrobats and underwater stuff of synchronized swimming. And they was all just mind-boggling. And I started singing his praises to everybody I could. And nobody in New York or LA that I knew had ever heard of him. And I have a huge box of his prints in the basement here. And I keep hoping to have a show. This was from his Mongolian horse race series. And a couple of years later, he did this thing on Mexican car culture. And there's another image almost identical to this of cars racing across the desert in this delta fan shape with the dust behind them. I chose it because it's a beautiful image. He's a virtual unknown. And I just find his work inspirational. There's so many photographers that are, working in near obscurity, making amazing images. And that's part of my goal is, having a gallery is I want to get stuff in front of people that they are not seeing.
And this fifth image is the one that is over your left shoulder, I believe, if I see it correctly.
Yeah, this is Evgenia Arbugaeva. And I picked this because, not just because she's on the walls here at the moment, but because her work really excites me. And it excites me to find, and she's young, she is 37, 38, born in Siberia during the Soviet period, grew up part of her life in Siberia and part in other parts of Russia, has spent a lot of time in the Arctic and a lot of time with walrus hunters, and just makes incredibly beautiful images. And did a documentary short this year that was nominated for the Academy Award, which I highly recommend your viewers see. It's called Haul Out. It's a 25-minute piece about a walrus haul out of Siberia, and it's extraordinary. When I was first thinking about opening this gallery, I was at the Greenberg Gallery in New York, and one of the curators said, "I'm going to give you one piece of advice. She said, never put anything on the wall that doesn't excite you, because people smell it on you the moment they walk in the door. If you're not excited about the work, they'll know it." And I really took that to heart, and I don't put anything on the walls that doesn't excite me.
So Greig Cranna, gallerist and owner of the Bridge Gallery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's really been a pleasure talking to you. I love the enthusiasm you bring to the works that you're discussing, both the works that are on your wall and the things that have influenced you. Thank you for joining us here on the Crit House. It's greatly appreciated.
This has been great. I hope your viewers appreciate my choice, and hope they'll research some more, especially Evgenia. She's one to watch.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, I am learning from all of these episodes, and you have given me 3 photographers that I was not familiar with. So I'm gonna I have learned already, and I will continue to dive in to learn some more, and I'm sure that others will who are watching as well. If you are interested in joining us on the Crit House, you can always do that by using the hashtag my5, by posting your 5 images on Instagram and tag us at the Crit House, and perhaps we'll have you on the program. Greig Cranna from the Bridge Gallery in Cambridge, Massachusetts, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you
Thanks
all
for
for
having me.
watching the Crit
Yeah.
House.
Been a pleasure. Thanks. Appreciate it.